And then if you were to, hypothetically speaking, loop these envelopes, I'm going to add another macro, and I'm going to turn the times down on both of these, and I'm going to macro map these loop modes so that I can change them all at once. I'll call this loop mode. Now I'll put and it'll keep going as long as you have sample for it. Nasty. Yeah, and then if you want it to always like re-trigger, you can click, and then it won't. The envelopes are less easy to duplicate off. Man, that sounds good. But yeah, you get a very different FM sound as you change the samples. If the FM is a bit much, and it can be a bit much, sometimes I'll try the AM. And the AM sounds good with square waves. It's really unnatural to have that. See, it's got that kind of video gamey effect. I'm going to turn the loop mode off, and then I'm going to extend the decay on the pit. Yeah, the 0.5, the lower octaves of AM. Nasty. Especially when you tune up the spread, because you're getting detuned versions of the pitch oscillator, or the FM oscillator too. Nasty. Yeah, so really, really cool. You can do a lot. If you do for drum sound design, sometimes it can be nice to have a fixed frequency, and then you can specify a frequency and then multiply it like 0.1, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Volume to velocity can be very handy for FM. More you hit the note harder, you get more FM. Hit it light, no FM. Very easy to control that and super expressive. Sometimes I'll even put it up at 100, and then it's basically like whatever this value is, that's the maximum velocity value, and then lower values go down on the thing. And that can be combined with the time to velocity, which this envelope also has. Right, oops, take that. Fun. Okay, and then when you turn the pitch envelope on, I'm going to put the pitch envelope to 12 and give that a bit of a decay. And now I'm going to loop them. Make it shorter. Oh wait, I could have put this on loop. There we go. Yeah, especially when you get them going in different amounts. And then put it on the grid mode here. I have it on beat. That locks it to that grid. And then higher, you put on sync, and then that means that the grid is like relative to the grid in Ableton, as opposed to just synced, but relative to the onset of the note. But yeah, most of the time it's on trigger. Yeah, and then these time to velocity parameters. shift. This isn't a key split one, but on the zone shift ones, it like shifts the incoming note up and down. It like kind of transposes the MIDI on the way in. That can sometimes be useful. All right, so the filter global tab, this is just amazing because you have the same envelopes with the looping and the modes and everything. I'll often macro all of the envelopes so they have the same loop modes. And those can all same parameters on the envelope. You got time to velocity, volume to velocity, looping, time here. Bottom right, that's where you specify the voices and the retriggering. Time to key is really cool. That means that the higher the note, the faster, the lower the note, the slower. Here's just the global time parameter, which is I always have macroed, right? Really nice to be able to control that on a macro. And one of my favorites is the random panning. Watch this. Really cool on like lead elements and stuff. I wouldn't normally do it on a bass, but really, really cool. This is the filter envelope, which is just like the other ones, time to velocity, looping with the modes, and I'll macro that again. And then that same time parameter where there's a time between each loop. And then the filter, you've got low pass clean, which is, I use low pass clean more than anything. High pass clean, band pass clean, notch clean, and then the morphing filter clean, and the morphing filter shape shifts between all the filters. And then key is on 100% by default. You may want to take that off of your, off if you're doing like drum 128s, you don't want that on. Velocity to filter though for a drum 128 can be very cool. So then your soft notes are duller and your hard notes are brighter, just like a real drum sound. So that can be very cool if you're doing drums. And then the shaper, you've got several options, and you've got before or after the filter. The options are soft, which is, as you can see from the transfer curve here, it's just like, you know, our good old soft clipping in the Ableton saturator. Hard clipping is not that hard. You can see there's still a knee to it, but it does produce a bit of that hard clipping sound. But this isn't like the kind of hard clipping you'd use to trim peaks off, you know? This is like a pretty aggressive tonal hard clipper. Sine is really cool. People are sleeping on sine. I like sine a lot, especially for sine wavy things like a kick. I'm gonna put it after the filter. You get a real acidy sound out of it. But yeah, sine sounds really good on things like kicks and other drums. And it has this great way of making the quiet parts of the sound super loud, right? Because this is a transfer curve. So this is like quiet portions of the wave at the bottom right, loud portions at the bottom left, loud portions at the top right. Well, look, you can see that, you know, we're getting a very high amplitude at a low portion of the volumes in that transfer curve. So you get a big effect on the quiet portions of the wave. And then 4-bit, you can see it's got some zigzags in it. And 4-bit is cool. It's not exactly a bit crush. Like there is a bit of reflecting going, you know, it's kind of like the sine wave in that there's like a reflection. Whereas see, these are more normal transfer curves. Like purely linear would be just bottom left to top right, like a 1-to-1 graph. But that one has more of a bend in it. That changes the sound more. This, you get more quiet action. And then this, you get quiet action and highs, because remember, you need all the frequencies to make those ziggle-zaggle edges like you get on a bit crusher or a square wave. So the distortions here, but there's also, if you set the filter to not clean mode and it is on low pass, high pass, band pass, or notch, you get various types of dirt and character to add to the filter. OSR is kind of like a hard clippy one. If you look here, this is one area that I've learned a lot from that info box that I've had open this whole time. So circuit types, select from 5 circuit types. Clean matches the filters found in EQ8. OSR is a state variable circuit with hard clipping. MS2 is a Sallen-key circuit with soft clipping. SMP is a hybrid between the MS2 and PRD is a ladder circuit without resonance limiting. So what that all means is OSR has a nice hard clip in it. You get a good distortion out of that. MS2 is like the MS20, famous synth by Korg, famous for bass. Can be quite nice for bass. And it has a softer clip. The SMP is a hybrid between MS2 and PRD. I heard it was modeled after like an MPC low pass or some other hardware sampler low pass, and that's why it's called SMP. But that may be a rumor. I have only heard this verbally. But I like the sound of the SMP. I find myself using the SMP a lot. And then the PRD is the famous like Moog ladder filter. I don't know if it sounds quite like a Moog ladder filter, but it can be cool when you turn the resonance up, because a lot of digital filters sound a bit poopy when you turn the resonance up. But to be honest, if I'm going to turn the res up, I normally put on clean and then have a shaper be after the filter so that resonance hits the shaping, and that's how you get that nice like acid sound. All right, so let's go into the modulation. In the modulation tab, and look at this, just the glory of this. This is one of the exact same sampler envelopes that you get everywhere else. The best envelope in Ableton. Like, I can't really think of a way you could improve this envelope. It's so great. And then below it, you can send this envelope to all these destinations. And they are cool destinations. And some of them are stereo, which means you get a different version of that effect in the left and right if you are sending it stereo modulation, which you can. So M is mono, so sample selector, you can have the envelope effect, the sample selector, the sample offset, loop start, loop length, release loop, the pitch of only the FM AM oscillator, or pitch of the sample only, pitch of only the AM FM oscillator in stereo, pitch envelope amount, volume of the FM oscillator in stereo, shaper amount, that's the distortion in stereo, filter frequency in stereo, filter resonance in stereo, filter morph in stereo, filter drive in stereo, filter envelope amount in stereo, volume in stereo, which it does sound different than when you change the panorama. I'm not sure how they're different, because panorama is mono and volume is stereo. What does that mean? I don't know. And then you've got time, which is great to be able to affect the global time. And then you can affect the parameters of the other 3 LFOs. Super cool. And you get 2 destinations. So you can do a lot of stuff. And I'll show you some kind of cool trickery with that in just a sec. But yeah, so LFO 1, this is kind of like your basic LFO. This is like bread and butter. You know, these 4 destinations, like how many times when you're making a sound do you want a little LFO to the volume, the filter, the pan, or the pitch? Those are the most common destinations. And a lot of people hate these mod matrix drop down menu things, especially people who are like visually impaired or high. They don't like that. So having these hard routed destinations is nice. So you can specify sine, square, triangle, ramp down, ramp up, or little picture of a city LFO. So what is little picture of a city LFO? Well, once I tell you, you will want to move in, because that is the sample and hold LFO, also known as the random LFO. And what that little picture of a city represents is a sample and hold. So what is a sample and hold? Well, this is a type of circuit where you have a white noise generator that is generating endless amounts of variety of white noise. And that's all the frequencies, that's all the values, they're constantly changing all the time, right? So what a sample and hold will do is it will choose a random value from that cycling set of values, or that set, completely random set of value, and it will hold it. And it will hold it for X amount of time specified by frequency. So if you turn it up, you get a very quick squiggly poo at 30 hertz. And if you turn it down, you will get slower changes. And if you turn it all the way down and leave it on retrig, then it's so slow that you rarely hear a second change, meaning that the change of the note onset is what samples and holds a random value, meaning that you get a different random value per note. And that is just the magic. So LFO on, put it on little city mode, all the way down, retrig on, and that gives you a different random value. So I'm gonna put that to the pitch. right? Try the volume, right? Panning, and filter if you have the filter on. See what I'm saying? Clean circuit, resonance up into a shaper, especially a sine. That sounds super cool, right? And turn up the volume too. And because the volume is before this shaper circuit, you're getting different amounts of harmonics with the volume, not just when you change the filter. Yeah, and if you push it hard into a clipper at the end with this makeup, now you can see that that volume has become a tonal modulator. That's a really great thing about clipping, is that if you're pushing into something that gives you a hard limit and your shaper is affected by the volume, well, if you change the volume, you're now changing the tone instead of changing the amplitude. Right? So I'll illustrate that with this LFO. So I'm going to go back to our basic sine wave here and just open everything up so it's as long as it can be. And now I'm going to push it into this clipper. You can see that the clipping is generating highs, and as the volume decays, the highs go down. Well, what happens if I turn on a sine LFO nice and fast to the volume? You can hear it's like the highs are going and coming. Some people might think that's a low pass filter wub, but it's not. All those highs are being generated by the clipping, right? I'll put the oversampling on. It's a little more flattering with the oversampling on. So you can make a wub by wubbing the volume, or you can make a wub by wubbing the FM. Here, let's go back to, take the volume down here. Then put, oh yeah, I gotta take that filter off, I think. And am I low pass or something? Why is that not giving me? Oh yeah, it's on AM. Oh no. Oh hello, decay got all short. Why is, oh, it's unfixed. That's why. There we go, there's that wub. So that's a wub with the FM, but you can also, if you turn the FM down, make a wub of the filter. I'll turn the filter on here to our nice friend, the low pass. And I'll change the, give us more highs before the filter. Right, so you can hear the filter being wobbled, or we can do a wub by wubbing the volume into a clipper. Make that a little faster. So that's volume wub, and then this is a filter wub. Oh, wait. Or you can do both at once. Or you can add pitch. But yeah, pretty fun. There's lots of ways to make a wub, lots of different flavors of wubs to be wubbed. So yeah, really cool. Now these LFOs 2 and 3, these are special LFOs, and these are super, super, super cool, and they have more features than the normal LFOs. They are also stereo, and these are the stereo modulators I was talking about. So you have the same waveforms, the same frequency and sync, but you have an attack which fades in. You know, the other one has an attack too. You know, you can fade it in. Really good for vibrato, for example. Like people will often have like, you know, 1 or 2% around 7 hertz here, and then that will do like a pitch vibrato. But if you fade that vibrato in over like, I don't know, maybe 300 milliseconds. So the beginning of the note is stable, and then it gets more vibrato as it gets longer. That's a very common vibrato effect, so everybody's used to that fade feature. This guy has the fade too, but it has offset, so you can rotate the phase of it, and then it has key tracking, but it has this stereo phase down here, and you can have it be simply offsetting the phase, or on spin mode, you can make one ear's LFO be slightly faster or slower than the other ear, and that's called spin in Ableton world. So yeah, pretty cool. And then you get this same list of destinations. So really, really cool. I love it. So let's go to the shape or the volume. Yeah, let's do the pitch oscillator only pitch. Yeah, because that you can get some cool effects. So I'm going to mod that now. I got to give it some. Right, you can offset the. So spin is kind of like fading in the amount of stereo difference between them because they start in phase no matter where you rotate this guy. And then this can be cool when you fade it in because then it's kind of like. Pretty cool. So this is like the spread stays the same, and then this gets slowly more and more spread. And then when you take retrig off, each hit is going to be at a different point in the cycle. So sick. But what happens if I want to turn this up and down? If I right click it, I can't macro it, right? What gives? Why can't you change the depth? Well, check it out. You actually can. What you do is you turn on the auxiliary envelope, and then you specify LFO to amount A, 100%. And then if you were to change the sustain value, the attack down. Then that does it. So then to control that with a macro, I'll just right click and map initial and peak and sustain all to this one. And then this will be LFO amount. And then that lets you control the LFO amount with a macro, which is really nice. So I often will use the auxiliary envelope for that, but you can use it for lots of things. And it's really nice to have 3 LFOs, especially because LFO3 could be affecting the rate of LFO2, and LFO2 could be affecting the rate of LFO1. you know, and they could be in this like crazy chain, and they're negative. You put negative amounts too. So I'm going to say randomize this now by going little city mode, frequency all the way down, retrigger on, and then this is going to completely change the rate of this. And then if I map this LFO to say the pitch, like that's a lot of movement. And then I could have this be LFO 1 amount pitch as well. So then this is going to change the depth of yeah, it's like generating the sounds for you. Very cool. And then that brings us to the MIDI tab, where you got key, which can go to any of those destinations, velocity, off velocity, which I never use, mod wheel, very useful. I use mod wheel all day. Foot control, it's like your sustain pedal. That's like, I don't know, I think MIDI CC63 or something, but yeah, that can be useful. Pitch bend is nice because it zeroes in the middle. So if you have a parameter that you want to, you know, zero in the middle at 12 o'clock, like for example, panorama, having pitch bend to panorama is really nice, or to time is really nice, because then when the pitch bender is in the middle, everything is at zero. You have negative values on one side and positive values on the other. Fantastic. Note pitch bend, I rarely map that to anything other than just the note pitch bend. Same thing with slide and pressure, but yeah, really cool. Lots and lots of features. And man, it's just like the envelopes, the FM AM oscillator tab, and the envelopes, like that is just, that shit just rocks my world. And just the sound of FM on an already juicy sound, like a distorted bass sound or whatever, the sound of FM on that distortion is so cool, because all the effects that are baked into that distortion sample, those are all FMing too, which is like, if you were to try and do that with a synth, you'd have to have a modular synth where your FM oscillator is routing to like all of these parameters. Like I've done it upstairs. It sounds crazy, you know, but you got to have a wall of modular to do that. You can just do it right in the Ableton sampler. It's really, really cool. So yeah, that's the deep dive for today. Have fun in there and start making 128s, especially for drums. All right, peace.